Have you ever, like, made a decision in the blink of an eye and it turned out to be right?
Oh.
And you're like, whoa, how did I know that?
We often just kind of brush off those gut feelings as just random chance, but
Yeah.
I think that there's like a whole world of rapid cognition happening under the surface.
So we're diving into snap judgments and thin slicing today. And
Exactly.
why sometimes those super fast assessments can be so insightful even when we have no idea why.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, so can you give me an example of thin slicing, like in action?
Okay, so imagine a museum that's about to buy what they think is a 2,000-year-old Greek statue.
Okay.
It's called a Koros. And they've done months and months of scientific analysis, and, all the data seems to line up.
Seems like a pretty safe bet then, right?
You would think so. But here's where things get interesting. Despite all of that evidence, a bunch of art historians just had this immediate, like, visceral reaction against it.
Really?
They just knew it was a fake, even though they couldn't explain why.
Oh, so their gut was saying fake, but the science was saying real.
Exactly, and it turns out they were right.
Wow.
It was later revealed that their unconscious minds had picked up on these tiny little inconsistencies that the lab tests missed.
That's incredible. It makes you wonder how often we just ignore those gut feelings when they're actually trying to tell us something important.
It really does.
So you said that the unconscious mind was at work here.
Yeah.
How powerful is the subconscious when it comes to processing information and making those judgments?
I mean, it can be incredibly powerful even when we're not aware of it at all.
Okay, so we've seen that snap judgments can be surprisingly accurate. Do you have any other examples of thin slicing in action?
Yeah, let's switch gears a little bit to the work of John Gottman.
Okay.
He can predict whether a couple will stay together or not just by watching them for a short amount of time.
Wait, really just by, like, observing them? How is that even possible?
Well, he spent years studying couples, and what he's found is that each relationship has its own unique pattern interaction.
So he's, like, cracked the code of relationships.
Kind of, yeah. Like every marriage has a fingerprint, and Gottman can spot it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and he uses that to recognize signs of, things like love contempt or just disconnect.
So what are some of the signals we're missing in our own relationships?
That's a great question, and it's something we should all think about.
Yeah, for sure. I know I am.
We're always processing information unconsciously so much more than we realize.
Okay, so thin slicing can be really insightful, but I'm guessing it's not perfect, right?
Oh, of course not.
Are there times when we should be careful about trusting snap judgments too much?
Definitely, our intuition can be a really powerful tool, but it can also be influenced by things that have nothing to do with the actual situation, like,
Right.
past experiences or biases, or even just our mood at the time.
So our own baggage can get in the way.
Exactly. And a good example of this is what we call the Warren Harding error.
Warren Harding error.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard of that.
So Warren Harding was a very handsome man, and he actually became president of the United States even though he didn't have a ton of political experience.
So he got elected because he was good looking.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, people just unconsciously associated his good looks with positive traits like intelligence and competence.
So they totally misjudged his abilities because of his appearance.
Right.
It's like judging a book by its cover.
Yeah, and this kind of bias based on appearance, it's everywhere.
Oh, bad.
For example, studies show that there are way more tall men who are CEOs than you would expect by chance.
Lily, just because they're tall.
Yeah, height has nothing to do with being a good leader.
It's so interesting and a little scary how much our snap judgments can be a double-edged sword.
Totally. We need to understand how powerful intuition is, but also its limitations.
For sure.
Mhm.
So how do we even begin to understand those hidden biases that are affecting us?
Well, there's a tool called the Implicit Association Test, or IAT, and it's designed to reveal our unconscious biases.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
So basically, it measures how quickly we associate different concepts with each other.
Okay.
For example, the race IAT. It measures how quickly we connect positive or negative words with faces of different races.
So if you're slower to associate positive words with certain faces, that could indicate a bias.
Exactly. It's a way to get a glimpse at those hidden biases that we might not even know we have.
Wow, that's incredible. It must be kind of unsettling to see those associations laid out like that.
It can be, but it's also a chance for self-reflection and growth.
Yeah.
If we know about our biases, then we can challenge them and start to make better choices.
So much is going on under the surface.
Right, and this is just scratching the surface. There's so much more to explore in the world of intuition.
I can't wait to keep learning about it.
Me too.
We've been talking about how powerful snap judgments can be and how those judgments can be influenced by all sorts of things like stress or even our own biases.
Yeah, definitely.
But what about when we're trying to figure out what other people are thinking or feeling, that seems like a whole other level of complexity.
It's one thing to size up a situation, but trying to like read someone's mind,
Yeah.
that's a whole different ballgame.
Oh, for sure. And I've definitely had times where I totally misread someone's intention, so I'm really curious to hear more about this.
Well, we're always trying to interpret those little signals like facial expressions or body language
Right.
to try and figure out what's going on in someone's head.
Yeah, it's like we're all amateur mind readers.
Exactly. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes
Sometimes we miss the mark.
yeah, and those misinterpretations can sometimes have serious consequences.
Oh, yeah, consequences. Can you give me an example?
Sure, let's talk about the story of Amadou Diallo.
Okay.
He was shot by police officers in New York City because they misread his actions.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
They saw him standing on his stoop and they perceived him as a threat.
Because of the pressure of the situation, I imagine.
Right, and unfortunately, their misreading of his intentions led to a fatal misunderstanding.
It's heartbreaking to think about how easily snap judgments can go wrong, especially when fear and stress are involved.
Absolutely. And the Diallo case, it really shows how important context is. The factors like stress and arousal, they can cloud our judgment and make it harder to read people accurately.
So our brains basically get overwhelmed and can't think clearly.
Right. In those moments, our brains might prioritize survival over, nuanced social processing.
Makes sense. We're focused on potential threats, not on subtle social cues.
Exactly. It's unsettling to think about, but it's crucial to understand these dynamics so we can be more aware of how stress and fear can influence our perceptions.
Okay, so mind reading is tricky and it can be influenced by external factors, but are there ways to improve our ability to read people accurately?
Yes, definitely one fascinating area of research is on what are called microexpressions.
Microexpressions, what are those?
They're these super quick, involuntary facial movements that reveal true emotions.
Oh, so even if you're trying to hide how you feel, your face can betray you.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like this. Our faces are windows into our emotions, and even when we try to control our expressions, those microexpressions can leak out and show what we're really thinking or feeling.
Wow, it's like a secret language written all over our faces. But how do you learn to read these microexpressions? They sound super subtle.
It takes practice and careful observation, but you can actually train yourself to recognize them.
Really? Are there like classes or something?
Yeah, there are books, videos, even online courses that can teach you about the different types of microexpressions and how to spot them.
That's so cool. It's like learning a whole new language, but instead of words, you're decoding facial expressions.
It is, and it can be a really valuable skill to have.
I can imagine it would be helpful in all sorts of situations.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've got microexpressions. Are there other things that can cause these mind-reading failures?
Yeah, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something called temporary autism.
Wait, temporary autism? Now that sounds kind of strange. How can someone be temporarily autistic?
So it's important to understand that we're not talking about an actual autism diagnosis here.
Okay.
What we're talking about is how certain situations can temporarily affect the social and cognitive skills that are often affected in people with autism, even in those who are neurotypical.
So it's like a temporary glitch in the brain's ability to process social information.
Exactly. You could think of it as a short circuit in the brain's mind-reading abilities, and it can happen in situations of extreme stress, fear, or sensory overload.
So when our brains are overloaded, those mind-reading circuits can shut down.
Right. It's like when you're in a car accident, everything happens so fast and you're so focused on just surviving that you might not even remember what the other driver looked like.
Yeah, that makes sense. In those moments of crisis, we're not really thinking about other people's intentions or feelings.
Yeah.
We're just reacting.
Exactly. And this can be a real problem, especially in situations where snap judgments have serious consequences.
So it sounds like we need to train ourselves to stay calm in those stressful situations so we don't lose that ability to think clearly and accurately assess what's going on.
You're right. And there are ways to do that. One effective technique is to slow down the decision-making process.
Slow things down. But wouldn't that be counterintuitive, especially in high-pressure situations?
It might seem that way, but research shows that even a short pause can drastically improve the accuracy of our judgments.
Really just taking a moment to think things through.
Exactly. That pause allows your unconscious mind to catch up, process information, and come up with a more accurate assessment.
So it's like giving our brains a chance to reboot and run its programs.
Exactly. And slowing down our decision-making does just that. It gives our unconscious mind the time it needs to make sense of things.
So instead of just instantly reacting, we should try to pause even for a split second before we act.
Right. It's about being more mindful and aware of our thoughts and feelings And the more we practice that, the better we'll get at making those tough decisions under pressure.
It's kind of unsettling to think about how our snap judgments can be so easily thrown off by things like stress and, all those unconscious biases we've been talking about. It really makes you wonder if there's anything we can do to train our intuition to be more reliable. Is that even possible?
It's a great question, and the good news is, yes, you can actually train your intuition.
Really?
It might seem like this mysterious thing that we can't control, but it's actually a skill you can develop like anything else.
Okay, but how do we train something that's happening mostly in our unconscious mind?
Well, think about it this way. Our brains are super adaptable.
Okay.
With practice, we can strengthen certain neural pathways and make those intuitive processes more efficient and accurate.
So it's like learning to play an instrument. The more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly. And a good analogy here is improv comedy.
Improv. Okay. I'm not sure I see the connection.
Well, improv actors, they make it look like they're just winging it, but
Yeah.
really they've practiced for hours and hours.
Right.
They've internalized all these rules and techniques that let them react instantly and seem totally spontaneous.
So they're training their brains to think on their feet and trust their gut.
Exactly, and we can apply those same principles to everyday life. One of the key lessons from improv is the idea of agreement.
Agreement.
Yeah, like the actors accept every offer and build the scene together.
Okay.
And that's similar to how we need to be open-minded and adaptable in real life.
So instead of resisting the unexpected, we should embrace it.
Exactly. Be present, stay open to new possibilities, and respond to whatever happens with flexibility and curiosity.
I like that it's about shifting from rigidity to flexibility.
Exactly. And practice makes perfect. The more you practice making those quick, intuitive judgments, the better you'll become at it.
So we can actually train ourselves to become better mind readers and make better snap judgments.
You got it. But remember, intuition is just one tool. We should use it wisely along with critical thinking and, considering all the information we have.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between our rational minds and our gut instincts.
Exactly. When we can do that, we become much better decision makers.
This has been such a fascinating look into the world of intuition. We've covered so much, like the power of snap judgments, unconscious biases, the challenges of mind reading. It's given me a whole new understanding of how my own mind works
I'm glad to hear that.
and how I can make better decisions in all parts of my life.
That's great.
As we wrap up this deep dive, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
I do pay attention to your gut feelings. They often have important information that you haven't consciously processed yet.
Okay.
But also know that intuition has its limits. Practice those intuitive skills, challenge your biases, and try to create environments where snap judgments are as accurate and fair as possible.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've all had times where our intuition has led us astray, but by understanding how it works, we can really use it to make better decisions.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure.
Remember, everyone, the journey of understanding our intuition is never really over. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep trusting your gut, but do it wisely.
Couldn't have said it better myself.